Hello, everyone. Ron here from L.T.L Tutoring Central. And this is another live stream. And we'll see how it goes today. Today, I'm talking about good study habits or good study skills. I noticed I named it a little bit differently on one of the icons, but it's all about having some good study skills or good study habits so that no matter what you're studying, you can do better. You can improve upon your reading, your understanding, your ability to take tests and quizzes, and all of those fun things. I'm going to share my screen in just one moment, and we'll get started right in on it. If you have comments or questions, you can put them in the chat. I can't always see the chat while I'm doing the screen share, but I will try to get to them later on. And if you're watching this video later, because after the live stream, it will be posted on YouTube for later viewing whenever you like, or to repeat the viewing if you want to remind yourself of some good study habits, that's also a great idea. Now I have this, I'm just going to make this a little smaller so that you can see this a little bigger. Good study habits. All right, let's get started. So choose a location with good lighting, a firm chair and working surface, and where interruptions will be at a minimum. I know this is not always possible. If you're teaching your children at home, which a lot of people are doing right now because of the COVID-19 situation, or you're a homeschooler, or you're just doing homework after school, because we will get back to that, I'm assuming, or if you're a student yourself, an adult student, sometimes it's hard to find a good location. It doesn't have to be a whole room. It can be the corner of a room. It can just be a certain area. It might even be dual purpose, but if you can find a corner, even where you can put a table or a desk and a chair and a few of your items, it's better to have a dedicated space if that's possible. If not, you do the best you can. Good lighting is important, because if the light is too dim or too bright, it makes it difficult. You'll start to fall asleep, or you'll have eye strain. So you want to avoid that. So having a location where you know this is a study place, that can put you in the right mindset, that can get you ready to work. Or to learn. Sometimes I should avoid the word work, because everyone thinks work is a dirty word these days, but it's not so bad learning. Learning can be fun. Tip number 2, create a study schedule for 1 week, allowing yourself breaks to reward yourself. At the end of the first week, make an honest assessment of how well you did and revise if necessary. Stick to it for the rest of the year or the semester if it's working. Obviously, if it isn't, you need to reassess and adjust your schedule. Having a schedule, I've done videos specifically on setting a schedule, is so important. Without a schedule, often things get put off to tomorrow, and that never happens. Tomorrow never comes. So having a schedule and knowing that you're going to sit down and do your studies for a set amount of time, again, remember, in your set location, that can really help you to have that mindset and to be prepared for learning. So having a schedule is more important than people recognize. A lot of parents recognize this at the beginning of this COVID-19 situation. They're trying to teach their children at home, and it's chaotic. It's chaotic because you don't have a schedule. You have to have a schedule to make it work well. Tip number 3, take notes. Another piece that's often ignored is the taking notes piece. Everyone thinks they will remember. I like this topic. I'm interested in it. I read it. I get it. I understand it. I'll remember it. You won't. You'll remember some of it maybe, but you're probably not going to remember the details. You're going to miss certain key points. So taking notes is really important. And then review your notes at the end of the day, and review your weekly notes at the end of the week or at the beginning of the week. Pick a time, review. And if you're doing this rotating review, simple as it sounds, it's often the difference between fair and excellent marks. And never mind the marks, it's often the difference between having good recall and good detail, and not. So it's the learning that's really important. You want the marks because that's what gets you to the next grade level. That's what gets you into a good university or into a good job maybe later. But you really want the learning. That's what you really want. The marks are just something at the end of the day that proves that you actually learned something. So take notes. Don't be afraid to take notes. If you want, you can take annotations on the side. I talked about Common Lit. You can do that automatically on the computer. So you're sort of taking notes as you go. But even if you do annotations, it's also good to write down notes. Writing with your hand, printing or writing cursively is very good. The brain is wired differently using cursive writing than it is typing. So I still recommend taking notes the old-fashioned way, maybe because I'm old, but but there it does seem to be research that proves that students who take handwritten notes have far better retention and recall than students who use only devices. However, students typing their notes do better than those who are only doing auditory as well. So all of them are good. If you want to do all of them, that's great, but I still think you should write down your notes. Tip number 4, do more than the bare minimum. Don't just do the least amount possible. Always look to do a little more. So if you're reading something in science, let's say on volcanoes, why not look up some videos on volcanoes? Nowadays, it's so easy with the computer, even on your cell phones, iPads, other devices. You can look up videos, you can look up podcasts, you can look up texts, other texts about whatever subject you're studying. So if it's volcanoes, you can find other texts explaining about volcanoes, videos, excuse me, and looking at the same subject from different angles, from different points of view, different speakers, uh, and visuals can really help you to understand it better in the first place, and then also to recall it later because you have more connections. Remember that network of knowledge or that web that I'm talking about in your brain, not the web on the internet, but the web up here in your brain. The more connections you have, the more synapses you have, will help you to remember and also to use that information later when you're learning new material. You can refer back to things you've already learned. Number 5, understand what you are supposed to do in your homework before you leave the classroom. Well, right now, students aren't really in the physical classroom, but certainly understand what you're supposed to do before you attempt it, if possible. It's the best place to ask for clarification normally is the classroom, but now contact your teacher. Yes, a tutor such as myself can be helpful. I can often explain, but I am not the teacher. I don't know which questions your teacher assigned. I'm not sure exactly how your teacher wants you to do this project. So your teacher is the most valuable source to check with and make sure that you're on the right track. Normally it would be in the classroom. Right now it would be online probably. It could be in Google Classroom. It could be an email you have, but check with your teacher to know what you're doing. You need to know what you're supposed to do before you get started. Number 6, try to prepare ahead. So if you know that something's coming up, and I know even right now, some teachers are posting in the classroom or they're sending out texts and emails to students with a list for the week of upcoming assignments and projects and books to read, things of that nature. So if you know what's coming, you can read a little bit in advance. You can look ahead to what's coming up and you can sort of prepare yourself. And that way you're not going in cold. Usually you're walking into a classroom, but even now, if you're going to have an assignment, if you've read about it before you go into it, then there might be new reading material, but you'll already have a head start. So what you thought might be a boring class turns out to be fun, or at least more interesting, because it's much more interesting if we have some concept of what we're getting into ahead of time than to go in cold and the teacher begins talking and you have no clue and you're trying to process too much all at once. So if possible, and you can't always do this because sometimes you don't really know what's coming up, the teacher just begins, but try to prepare ahead if you can. Good study habit number 7, organize yourself so you complete chores before you start your homework. So this is if you're doing homework. This was typical if you're going into a classroom situation during the day and then you're doing your homework later at home. Now you're doing all your schoolwork at home, but treat your schoolwork that you're doing at home in the same way. So you limit your phone calls to before or after your session. So remember, you set a schedule. So you have a schedule. I'm going to do, let's say, 2 hours of schoolwork or learning at this point in time from 9 to 11 in the morning, let's say. It doesn't matter. I'm just saying a time. Uh, you're not making phone calls at that time unless you really have to phone your teacher or someone to find out what you're doing. Otherwise, the phone, shut it off, I would recommend, because they do have an off switch. People are surprised to know that. And you don't need to answer the phone. You don't need to be texting. You don't need to be doing anything outside of your learning. If you do this, you will learn better, but you will also get your work done faster and with better quality, because multitasking is not good. I know some people are very proud of being excellent multitaskers, but true multitasking is not a good thing because your brain focuses on one thing at a time. So when you're multitasking, you're really not. You may be trying to do many things at the same time, but you're really just jumping from this one to this one to this one to this one, and you're not really able to do them all at the same time. So set a dedicated time and try to stick to it. Unless the house is on fire, you should just focus on your learning, and you'll get more done in less time and it will be better quality. That's true for work as well. And I make mistakes. I do the mistakes all the time. When I'm talking about these tips, by the way, the order of the tips doesn't matter. I just put down different tips. It doesn't matter which number they are per se, but it also applies to the work situation. We all make mistakes. We all have to have reminders. I remind myself when I go through this, excuse me, little live lesson every time I do it. Oh yes, I made that mistake. I should have focused more. I shouldn't have tried to do 2 things at once. So it does take practice and it does take reminders to keep up with this. Good study habit number 8, take a close look at the way you take notes, back to the notes. Organize notes immediately after taking them. If you're still having problems with notes, you can talk to your teacher for that particular subject, because sometimes there's different note-taking methods for different subjects. I tended to use a similar note-taking method for all of my subjects, but it did vary slightly, especially for science, for example. And so sometimes you use more pictures and charts. Sometimes you use more text and a lot of writing, paragraphs and things of that nature. Sometimes it's all point form. So it really depends what course you're taking and what subject you're studying. And if you're not having success, the teacher might have some good tips. Presumably he or she is an expert in that particular area. And so hopefully your teachers will be able to help you. I have here, watch for note-taking lessons to come from me. There will be note-taking videos. There are some already. If you want to look at my channel, I have some, and I'm sure I will be doing more because, as I say, we need reminders from time to time. Don't let yourself fall behind. This one is really important. And all of these tie into one another. So remember, we talked about scheduling earlier. This is a part of scheduling. So if you have a proper schedule, if you assess your schedule, if it's working correctly, you won't fall behind. But if you're trying to say, well, I don't have a lot of homework this week, or I don't have a lot of homeworks for today, or a lot of learning I need to do today, so I think I can get all that done tomorrow morning. This is always a bad idea, because tomorrow morning something will come up and it won't happen, and it just keeps being pushed on and on. Procrastination. And you don't want to fall into that trap, because all of a sudden everything starts coming due at once, and next week the teacher sends a lot more work than you thought you were going to have. So try to provide time in your schedule for assignments. If you're still falling behind, take another close look at your schedule and make adjustments. So It's all, again, about scheduling, but it's also about sticking to it, to actually implement it. In fact, all of these tips are about implementation. If you don't actively use them, they don't work. Sometimes students will complain and say, well, I saw your video, or I listened to what you told me the other day, but it didn't work. And I say, well, okay, let's see your schedule. Well, I didn't really write down my schedule. I don't really have a schedule. Okay, well, let's have a look at your notes. Well, I didn't really bother to take notes. Well, you didn't actually do anything. You have to actually do it. So listening to me or listening to anybody, I don't care who it is, you can listen to your professor, you can be an excellent professor, but if you don't actually follow up, you're not really going to succeed very well. So you actually have to implement the tips, use them, and make them work. And as I say, you have to remind yourself to do that sometimes. Always. I'm still studying, but I studied for years before I started teaching and tutoring, and I've been tutoring since 1996. I still have to remind myself. It's a good thing when I'm working with students, it often reminds me what are these good study habits that I should be using. And as I say, there are also very good work habits. Number 10, ensure that your work is proofread, edited, and neat. So if you're writing it, you need to do that. If you're typing it, you need to do that. If you're using Google Docs, you still need to do that, because I was working with students recently on Google Docs, and there's lots of tech that will help you, but it missed an awful lot of things too. So you still need to proofread and edit your work and make sure that it says what you think it says, because it may be in your head, but it doesn't always get on paper, and it doesn't always get on the computer screen. The teacher or professor must be able to read and understand your work. If you're typing it, it's going to be readable, but it might not make sense, or you might be missing essential information or detail. So you still need to proofread it and make sure that it is as good as you can make it. Because often when I go over papers with students, or on the computer too, same thing, I'll say, well, read that out loud. When they read it out loud, they realize, wow, like, why did I write that? Well, because we all do that sometimes when we're typing or we're writing very quickly and we have the thoughts in our heads. We think we put them down, or we think we put them down correctly, but when we check back, it's not really what we meant. So you have to be a little bit careful with that. And proofreading and editing your work is very important. So don't skip that step. A lot of people do. Don't forget to get a good night's sleep. Now, you might say, well, what does that have to do with studying? That can't be a study habit. Well, it really is, because your body and your brain are the same thing. Your brain is part of your body. If you're not taking care of your body, you're not taking care of your brain. If you're not taking care of your brain, guess what? It's not going to work that well. It will still work, hopefully, but it's not going to work at its peak performance. So you need a good night's sleep, 8 to 10 hours. Yes, you do need it. I don't care who you are. You do need that amount of sleep to be at your peak performance. You do not need that amount of sleep to survive. You do not need that amount of sleep even to do well sometimes. Some people say, oh, I did well and I only had 4 hours or whatever they had. That's good. I'm glad you did well. Imagine what you could have done if you'd had proper sleep. Imagine what you might have accomplished if you'd been well rested. And sometimes it catches up to you later. So you can get away with it for a while. I did. I worked. I was studying. It's true, there wasn't a lot of sleep time sometimes, but it wasn't healthy. And I know that I didn't do my peak performance on some courses when I was in that situation. So I changed that situation and try to get as much sleep as I need now. It's still sometimes difficult. We all have issues sometimes, but try to, because it is important and it does make a huge difference. If you're falling asleep in class, if you're falling asleep while you're reading on the computer, you obviously are not gaining as much as you would if you were well rested and alert. Also, eat breakfast. So again, this has to do with your body, but remember, your brain is your body. So you need nutrition. So it's not just about breakfast, but breakfast is one a lot of people skip. Now, maybe they're not as much now that they're getting up later and having a meal, whether you call it breakfast or not, depending what time you get up. But when you were running out to the school, A lot of people skip breakfast. So also make sure you have a good lunch and healthy snacks throughout the day. Like I say, it's not just about breakfast. It's about giving your body nutrition, which gives your brain nutrition to function well. Numerous small meals can provide you with a constant energy supply and help the brain function efficiently. So you'll avoid those sort of peaks and valleys that we sometimes have. So you eat something, especially something sweet, and you get a lot of energy. You drink coffee, get caffeine, get a lot of energy, and then you fall. So try to have a few small meals throughout the day. It's actually easier now with everybody at home. But even when you go back to school and back to work and all of those fun things, make sure that you try, and it just needs to be small. It doesn't, a lot of people say, well, I don't have time, or I don't give me a break. You know, sometimes it's just a handful of almonds or a piece of apple or something. It doesn't have to be huge. It doesn't have to be a sit down full out meal, but that'll just level your sugar levels and your energy levels so that you'll be optimum for the whole day, hopefully. So sleep and proper nutrition, very important for the body. It'll also help you maintain a good weight, etc., etc. Other health benefits. So it's good for many things, but especially for our purposes, for your brain and your ability to study and your ability to learn. So those are just a few tips on how to do better, how to always improve yourself. And as I say, I'm not just talking to you, I'm talking to myself. I'm talking to teachers and professors. Everybody can benefit from following these tips. I do have a Udemy course called Study Skills, Become an A+ Student. I'm going to put a coupon below if you're watching this on YouTube. If you're on some Instagram or something else, I'll put the link somewhere. I'll try to. I think it's difficult on Instagram, actually, a lot more in a way, but I don't. So you don't have to worry. You won't get inundated with emails. You will get a few, but you won't get inundated with emails from me. I just don't do that. So check that out. I also have photo prompt paragraph writing lessons. They're blocks of 5 lessons, and that's more extensive training with me. So check the website. You'll actually need to send me an email, and I can send you the information for the photo prompt paragraph writing lessons. And I will give you I will also give you a bargain on that. What you need to do is tell me this code. I'm going to put it in right now. I'm actually we're putting it in live. I meant to do that this morning. So let's do that. Let's do this code. BPH3. Just tell me in the email that you've watched this video. This it doesn't have to be live. You could watch it later. BPH3, and I will give you a deal on the photo prompt paragraph writing lessons. I will reduce the price considerably. And we work together on, not together, we're not face-to-face on these, but you will complete lessons, and I will be assessing them and sending you lots of information on how to improve your writing in terms of sentence structure, paragraph structure, idea generation, coherence, unity, lots of things. And it's different for each student. So there's a set of lessons, but there's different responses to the lessons. So it all depends on where you are now, and I adjust my teaching method to your needs. So that's a very good set of lessons as well. I also have common lit lessons, literature lessons, and there are 3 levels. So basic, extended, and expanded. So you can ask me about the common lit lessons as well. That's new. So we're still putting everything together, but some people have had good luck with those as well. All right, I'm going to stop my share for just one moment. Those were the tips that we covered today. I know I went through them fairly quickly, and that can be a challenge sometimes, but I'm just going to have a quick look. Okay, I don't see any questions at the moment or anything that I need to respond to right now, so that's fine. All right. It's Ron Johnson from L.T.L Tutoring Central. Please don't forget to subscribe to the channel, click the notification bell, like the video if you do. I hope you do. And if you have a question or a comment, you can always put it down below, or you can go to the website. There will be a link below for the website. And you can send me an email from there. There will be a link below to get a coupon, 2 coupons actually, one to my study skills course and one to test and exam strategies. I'll put them both below as well. So check that out. In the meantime, keep learning and keep having fun. All right. Thank you very much.